Hey y'all, I'm back with another video, and as you can see right up from the gate, yes, I did cut my hair. Um, I recently took a wellness day because I needed time to just take a brief pause and woosah and breathe to take some time to remove myself from dental school. And I went back home, and honestly, I went back home to get my taxes done because it's tax season. And then more importantly, yeah, I got my hair cut and I figured, okay, I'm back here in Decatur where it's greater. And I'm like, I might as well just get my hair cut. And yes, my barber was happy to see me. So it was nice taking wellness days or wellness day, excuse me. DCG allots their students to take 2 per semester. And I said, yeah, why not take advantage of this? So enough about me. I'm here to talk about letters of recommendation. And I understand we're inching closer towards when the application will open up for those seeking to be part of the class of 2031 and officially start dental school in summer of 2027. So for those of you who are like, okay, Wes, do you have any more tips, strategies, gems, advice, anything you're willing to relay to me? Sure, I'll be more than happy to relay those to you. So let's get started. So I'm going to start off by saying, for those of you who are first generation and was just like, okay, Wes, what do I begin? I know I need letters of recommendation, but what is my strategy? So here was my strategy. I was like, okay, God, the third and final time when I applied to dental school in summer of 2024, I started making moves in summer of 2023. So for me, I was like, okay, I know next summer is I was when I apply. This is my last time applying. Where am I looking to apply? So I took all my numbers and stats and was like, okay, between the schools A through Z, Z through A, where am I a competitive candidate at? And of those 7 schools, who's my number one? So DCG was my number one. And I went to their website and I was like, okay, y'all are my number one. So I'm going to composite my application around what DCG wants, but I need to ensure that the other schools are fairly consistent. So what I mean by that is DCG said you can do a committee letter or you can do 4 letters of recommendation. For me, I didn't want to do the committee letter. I'm like, at this stage of the game, everybody's an adult and people know how to communicate about how they feel about somebody, whether it's bad or in this case, hoping and praying is good. So I went with the 4 individuals' letters of recommendation. And on their website, they said you can do, I believe, 2 sciences, 1 doctor, or 1 other, or maybe DCG, it was 1 science, 1 doctor, and 2 wild cards or 2 other. But either way, when I was looking at the other schools, I said, okay, the 6 other schools that are wanting letter recommendations are 2 science professors. So I just said, screw it. I'm going to do 2 science, 1 doctor, and 1 other. And the schools that, again, I looked at, it was DCG, Florida, Tufts, Toro, Meharry, Arizona, and Cretan. I looked at those 7. So now that I had an idea of what these schools are looking for, then I had to strategize about who I need to approach. And so for me, I said, okay, I need to approach people who think highly of me. I built up a strong rapport with them. So who do I go to? So number 1, I went to my boss. She solidified the other category. I was working at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta at Hughes Spalding since 2019, and I was really working in her lab during COVID, and I was still one of the OG employees that was still there. I was started in 2019, but 2021, it was, I think, 4 of us that was still part of the OG team, and everybody else, for whatever reason, left. So she knew my mannerisms, professionalism, how I was able to meet my TATs in the lab. We call that turnaround times, with processing samples and doing my job accurately and efficiently. So I went to her. Secondly, one of the dentists who I shadowed and met in since 2011, I went with him and I built up a rapport with him throughout the years, to the point I remember when I was at UGA and I was pursuing my journalism degree, I was with the Fox 5 medical team in Atlanta, and they were like, Wes, we need a dentist who can talk about medical stories. Do you know any dentists who can talk about medical/dental stories? There we go. And I said, oh yeah, I know a dentist in Emmons Park. So they were down the street, round the corner, and they always went to him to talk about dental stories. And so he solidified the dentist category. And then with the professors, I said, okay, when I was at Georgia State, I took 4 different classes with the same professor. In spring of 2020, parasitology. Fall of 2020, it was medical microbiology. Spring of 2022, bacterial pathogenesis. And then in fall of 2022, it was pharmacology. So this man, he knew my mannerisms, knew how I carried myself, how I was professional, and I built up a rapport with him throughout the duration of my time at Georgia State and post Georgia State, to where I got my master's degree and now I'm working in corporate America. So he was also a good one. And then lastly, when I did the master's certificate online at the University of Florida, I said, okay, I need one more science professor, because one of the professors in which I wanted to go to, who I took vaccinology for, she I think retired or left Georgia State, and I lost her contact. So now that I'm at Florida, I said I need this professor to write me a letter of recommendation. And luckily I got him to write me a letter of recommendation, and he solidified the second science letter of recommendation because he taught anatomy, but I also had him for embryology and in the cadaver lab for human anatomy as well. So now that I had all my players covered, you know me, I'm all about dropping gems, advice, and golden nuggets. So if you're wondering, okay, but Wes, what moves did you make? These are the moves that I made. So number one, you got to be engaging in the class. So for me, maybe when I was at West Georgia, they told us to sit in the T, those who sit in the front row, and those, if there's like 5 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you sit in the first, I guess, row, but then the column, you sit in row 3. The professors will remember you. That was facts. But by the time I got to UGA and then Georgia State, I'm like, nah, I sat in the back. However, even though I was sitting in the back, I would still genuinely ask questions in class. Depending on if I knew the answer to the question, I would answer the professor's question. So that was the first time the professors were getting to know, okay, who is this kid constantly engaging in my class? And that's essentially what I did at Georgia State, to the point each individual would, well, I know the gentleman at Georgia State, he'll be like, oh, Mr. Clark, do you have a question? And the gentleman from University of Florida would say the same thing. Oh, Mr. Clark, do you have a question? Or Mr. Clark, that is correct. So now they know my last name and they know my face. Secondly, in addition to engaging in the class, I also went to office hours. I stayed in office hours. I lived in office hours. So I'm gonna go undergrad and then grad. Okay. In undergrad, I will never forget my OChem professor. He had office hours Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday was crazy. Wednesday was crazy. Everybody and their grandma needed help with OChem. But on Friday, nobody was there. And so I'm like, all right, God, I could be anywhere on this campus at UGA, but fine, I'll do OChem. And so I would, he had office hours, I think 1 to 4, I believe. So that first hour we studied OChem, and then those last 2 hours, because nobody else would come to office hours and stay throughout the entire duration during those hours. Yeah, I got to know the guy, and he knew me. He was like, okay, so Wes, what's your story? I'm like, yeah, well, I'm from Decatur. 8 red lights from the CDC. I started off at West Georgia. Whoa, you went to West Georgia? Yeah, I went to West Georgia. I have family at West in Carrollton. I was like, what? So you familiar with I-20 East and West? He said, yes, I'm very familiar with I-20 East and West. So now, not only did I have 1 hour to myself, between 1 to 2, but then 2 to 4, I had an additional 2 hours to myself to talk to the professor. And yes, the very first time back in the day when I applied, yeah, my letter of recommendation from him was strong. Secondly, when I was at Georgia State, master's degree, the gentleman who taught me for those 4 different classes, but I'll go with 2020 because that was with the pandemic, I was always in his office hours. And he was like, hey, Mr. Clark, I'm noticing that it's not that you're struggling in my class, it's that you're distracted. May I ask what's going on? I said, yes, sir. I'm currently working at a full-time job in Alpharetta, which we're working with COVID. I'm working 16-hour shifts, 6 days a week. And at the time, my part-time job, at least in 2020, they they didn't shut us down, but they said, hey, the laboratory is not in operations yet because we don't know how COVID is affecting children. So therefore, at my full-time job, working 6 days a week, 16-hour shifts. And he was like, my gosh, how are you breathing and walking? I'm like, by the grace of God. So now I had that connection with the professor in those in the class during the 2020 with parasitology and medical microbiology. So please go to office hours because you're planting the seed to build up that rapport with them to make your letter of recommendation even stronger. Okay, point number C, when you know the year in which you're going to pull that trigger and get ready to apply to dental school, you need to ask them in advance. So for me, I lucked up. Well, I don't want to say luck. I was blessed and fortunate because I'm gonna go back with the first time that I applied. So with my professor, my Oaken professor, I went to him early. I said, hey, I think it was the year 2016 because I was applying for 2017. I went to him a whole year early because we was cool like that. He said, oh yeah, thanks Wes for coming to me in a timely manner. And he pulled out his notepad and it was like 1 through 40 on there. I'm like, what is that? And he said, oh yeah, I have 40 slots. And literally, this was the kicker. He said, I don't go around advertising this, but literally, every January I have numbers 1 through 40, and the first 40 students on this campus who come to me, those are the first 40 I'm gonna write letters of recommendations for. This is UGA, it's one of me, hundreds of you all. I need to be in my right frame of mind to write a strong letter of recommendation. So for you, you want to go to dental school. I know someone who wants to study abroad. I know someone who's trying to need a letter recommendation so that they can ultimately get funding from the federal government. Someone is trying to get that internship, externship, scholarship. And if you want to achieve whatever goal your heart desires, I need to be in my right frame of mind. And once that 40 hit, whether it's in January, February, March, whenever it hits, that's it. No more individuals I'm writing a letter of recommendation for. So for me, that was my Oaken professor. And then with everybody else, fast forward to 2023, everybody with the exception of the professor from Florida, which I met him in 2024, I gave them a whole year notice. And with the professor from Florida, because I took his class between January and May, around late April, early May, to where I could tell I was going to get the B in his class, I still gave him enough time to where he could write a letter of recommendation on my behalf. So you got to get that good gauge with your professor or your recommenders for who you're going to approach about asking for a letter of recommendation, so that you give them enough time to where they can write a strong letter of recommendation on your behalf. And then once you get that okay from them, my next point is you need to have a meeting. I had a meeting with everybody where I gave them my resume and my interest statement. And this is where you need to have your interest statement written out, so that they have even more information to pull from and really write you a strong letter of recommendation. So please have a meeting with them. That really helps. The next point I would say is that to make it easier for them, you need to give them dates. So I remember with them, it was so funny because I was talking to each individual. My boss was like, okay, cool. You applying to dental school? Let's get you in dental school. When does the soft application opens up? And when does the hard, I guess, date application opens up to where you can hit submit and apply? And then what day are you going to apply? I said, okay, if I can remember, I said May 2024, excuse me, May 15th of 2024 is the soft open. And then the first day in which I can hit submit is June 1st, but at the very latest, June 6th. My boss from CHOA, she had that letter of recommendation uploaded in the system the same day on May 15th. I said, cool. The professor from the University of Florida, I told him what day I was looking to apply, which is June 6th at the latest. He submitted his by May 31st. The dentist that I went with, he was like, oh, thanks for giving me a heads up, Wes, about you're looking to apply June 6th, but the first day that you can actually submit is June 1st, and the soft launch or open is May 15th. Me and my family, we're going to Europe, and I don't want to be bothered in June. So I'll have your letter uploaded late May. And I think he uploaded his, I think the 7th day after May 15th. And then my professor from Georgia State, he was going through a lot at the time, but he had his letter of recommendation officially uploaded in the system. I submitted June 6th. So then, wait, 7th, 8th, 9th. So that Monday, after that Friday, I officially submitted his letter uploaded in the system. So I gave everybody an advance notice, and everybody was already on guard. Everybody was already on go. And yeah, that was one less thing I had to worry about. So when I hit submit June 6th, 98% of my application was complete. But like I just said, the last letter of recommendation from Georgia State professor was uploaded that Monday. And then the last caveat I want to give is that I mentioned it before, but I'm mentioning it again. Please build a rapport with these individuals. And this is 2 points I want to make into one. Please build a rapport with these individuals, because I'll never forget the dentist who I went to for a letter of recommendation. He said, Wes, I wrote one for you and another individual. The both of y'all, it was like smooth sailing. But there was a third candidate. She came to my practice, really didn't say anything, really didn't engage with me, my staff, let alone my patients. And I'm looking at her like, why you here? Like, you are not a prop or decoration. Like, you taking up space. Like, why are you here? And the girl was so bold and desperate to come to him for a letter of recommendation. He said, okay, I started with you. I started with another young lady. But when I got to that other young lady, I was looking like, okay, first, last name, she wants to be a dentist. But he knew for a fact, he confided in me. He just said, Wes, I knew that was the worst letter of recommendation I wrote. And wherever she applied to in America, I know the admission staff is going to be like, we not going to accept her, and she not going to be taking care of our patients. So I say this to say that you got to build a rapport with these individuals. And then I'll go with the professor route. One of the professors that I had for Georgia State, and I got him to write all these letters of recommendation for me, he was saying that, yes, there are times where people who sit in the front row, who got the A in the class, may have answered a question between January and May, or whatever semester it is. They may have answered a question or two, never spoke to me, never engaged with me. But yet at the same time, when they want to get into whatever medical school or professional school or job of their choice, but in this case, I'm going to stick with dental, he said, I don't know what to write. He said in their letters of recommendation, I say they got an A, they sat in the front row, answered a question or two, and I know they can just handle the rigors of your program. But there's no sustenance there. And the professor went a step forward and said, there were people who got B's and C's in my classes, Mr. Clark, in which I went above and beyond. I had sustenance to work with. Yes, they got to be in my class. They can handle the rigors of your program, but yet this all they had to overcome. They was working a full-time job, maybe a part-time job, taking care of a loved one or family member who was sick, all while still finding time to volunteer, or they're active in their community. They teach art classes at the local YMCA. So just because you got that A or B in your class does not mean that you're a shoo-in for getting a strong letter of recommendation if you did not put in the time to build a rapport with these individuals. And the only other thing I would say with that is take your time when filling out the letter of recommendation. With filling out the application. When you're trying to submit and upload everything, there is a part on that application that says, do you waive your rights to not know what the professors or recommenders wrote about you? Please, please, please slow down and hit yes, that you waive your rights, that you don't want to know what these people wrote about you. If you accidentally hit no, the way it was told to me when I was going through the process by some of the students around different schools in America, if you hit no, it signifies to the admissions committee that you don't trust what the recommenders put in your letters of recommendation. And it comes off like it's like a red flag, like, okay, why don't this person trust them? Why are they interested to know what is inside their letter of recommendation? So I would just add that little blurb as well. As always, those are my little blurbs. Those are my little tips. I hope this information helps. I understand we are slowly coming up on again, the application opening up this particular season. There will be more videos coming out that surrounds the admissions process. I hope this video helps. Thank you so much for watching wherever you are at in the world. Thank you again for your support. Peace and love. Cheers.